Today I'm joined by Benji Borner. Benji is the Managing Director of Technology Innovation and Leadership Services at Ascendix Consulting. Previously, Benji's been a CIO and led digital transformation in the manufacturing and finance industries. Benji, can we start off by talking a little bit about what competitive advantage means for you in the businesses that you've been in?
Yeah, it's been I've been in multiple industries, and so the competitive advantage has been really quite different in each of them. I've been in the loyalty marketing space, the financial services space, manufacturing space, and in the manufacturing space, there are processes and how we were able to efficiently deliver at scale was a differentiator. In the loyalty marketing space, it was about features and capabilities in our technology. In the financial services space, it was a regulated industry, and so the competitive advantage there was the customer experience.
So, what's the common thread that pulls these competitive advantages together?
Yeah, I think the common thread is really understanding what problem you're solving for your customers in the marketplace. I think a lot of times companies can lose sight of that if they're a manufacturing business, right? They're still creating something that is a need in the marketplace. But really, I think the common thread is just clearly understanding where your product, where your service, where your capability fits in the marketplace.
So, how does a company go about figuring out what their competitive advantage should be?
Oh, I think that this should be is an interesting question. I think a lot of times businesses don't even know what their competitive advantage is. And I think really, in either case, really understanding, listening to their customers, um, asking questions, watching how they use it. Those are all really good ways of understanding what it should be versus maybe not even knowing what it is.
Yeah. A pitfall that I've seen a lot of companies fall into is that they develop a technology and they get really excited about this bit of innovation, and they perhaps let that innovation overshadow the needs of the marketplace. When a company is developing a competitive advantage, how do they balance their internal innovation versus understanding the market dynamics and their customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tricky one because you always want to be, I think, innovating or expanding your offering. And I think really understanding what the competitive factors are is where that balance, that trade-off comes in. If your competitive factor or competitive advantage is your ability to buy at, discounted rates, like continuing to capitalize on that is important. But if market pressures or whatever is kind of hitting you from the external, then you've really got to think about how you extend your capabilities. Do you extend it geographically, or do you extend your product into an adjacent capability? Lots of different ways to think about balancing that innovation, but it should all be wrapped around the core offering.
So if we think about, processes and best practices, can you walk through the process that a company should follow to identify what it should really build its competitive advantage around?
Yeah, there's several resources that I like to use when I'm looking at capabilities of a business, whether that's the business model canvas or product-led operating model practices. I think, or even agile for that matter, they all have the this component of really understanding where your product fits and having discipline around the thinking that goes into making those decisions.
So when a company finds itself in a rapidly changing environment, how does it focus on sustaining a competitive advantage?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think it's easy to become complacent when you've got that competitive advantage, and I think really from there it's continuing to bring discipline into your thinking and your thought process around how do we expand this, right? There's always going to be new entrants, and I think in today's environment with the pace of change, man, it's tough for businesses because new technologies are coming out that oftentimes can deliver the same things that you're doing, and maybe less so in the manufacturing space, but in businesses where technology is at the core of the differentiation, it's a tough competitive market, and so I think the benefit is you've got customers today, right? And that can be one of the most difficult pieces to do when you're starting up a business. And so continuing to invest, expand in your capabilities where they're solving market needs, customer needs is the appropriate path from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges I've seen a business have is really balancing servicing their current customers versus getting those future customers. It can be a very hard equation to figure out.
Yeah, for sure. I think it really requires leadership discipline. I mean, there's in company businesses that I've been in that have been focused clearly on new revenue generation, which I think is a lifeblood of businesses. But you also have got to be thinking about what your existing customer base needs with the feedback that they're giving to you, and you don't want to lose them, right? They're tough to come back, and so I think it's a real balance to make sure that the capabilities that you're delivering today for your customers can be extended into winning new business.
Yeah. Another challenge that I've seen businesses have is just it's a lack of humility from the leadership. The leadership thinks that they're a Steve Jobs or a Henry Ford, and they say, the customers just want us to go where we already are. If we listen to the customers, we'll do the same thing forever. And they go off in a new venture and they put a lot of resources there, but they don't really understand the market dynamics.
Yeah, it's I've seen that a number of times. I call it the shiny object syndrome, where you think you've got this new innovative idea, and you build go run off and apply resource capital against those things without really knowing, is this a valuable problem to solve in the marketplace? And then subsequently, does it fit within my operating model? Do I have the people that I need in order to be able to do that? And I think in the absence of that, you end up with a pretty fragile ecosystem in your business, and so it's their ego, I think, can be involved for sure.
Yeah. So, what are some common pitfalls or challenges that businesses face when they're trying to develop their competitive advantage?
Oh, I think thinking better than the customer is obviously one of them, and they're the ones that are going to be buying your products, and so don't always having to be the smartest person in the room isn't always the best thing. Listening to your customers, I would say, is probably number one. I think a second pitfall would be taking too much time to figure out whether you got it right or wrong. I think there's a refrain that is used often, which is failing fast. I like to describe it as learning fast. I don't think failing fast matters. I think if you learn fast from your failures, that's where it matters, and you can evolve as an organization.
Yeah. The other side to those arguments is that if you listen to your customers, you just end up doing the same thing again and again, and you don't truly innovate. And, if you fail too fast, you don't really spend the time to really develop that business. So it's always a tricky balancing act for businesses.
So I think companies, in my experience around innovation, companies tend to have programs or innovation centers of excellence, and out of those, my experience, I have yet to see where those capabilities really have created a differentiation in the marketplace. They tend to be kind of idea generation, brainstorming, and so I think the innovation is really about not failing fast in the marketplace, but learning fast from your failures, and
Mhm.
using that to guide you for innovation. It's really, to me, it's a much smaller doses of innovation than big ideas.
That's interesting. So, what role does leadership and organizational culture play in fostering a competitive advantage at a company?
Yeah, I think leaders have a big job. I think they are ultimately responsible for it, and really, I think it comes down to the CEO or the person in charge, because I think innovation and the ability to be nimble, the ability to fail, that's really driven from the top. And if leaders are um, delegating too much to, as I think about innovation, innovation isn't a discrete function. It doesn't it's the responsibility shouldn't sit with a CIO, a CFO, a CMO. I think the CEO needs to make sure that his leadership team is operating in unison to continue to push the boundaries around the value proposition.
So let's talk about the gorilla in the room. AI is the breakthrough du jour. How should companies think about using AI as they develop their competitive advantage?
Yeah, so I've got two answers to this. So in preparation for meeting, I went out to Chat GPT and I asked it, tell me how should companies think about the value proposition, and
That's a bit of a
and
biased
really to
audience
help
there, Benji.
me. What's that?
ChatGPT is a bit of a biased audience about AI, I think.
Well, sure it is. But I think what was interesting was that what it came back with. It said, um, what is the key to driving competitive advantage? It's differentiation, it's customer focus, it's cost leadership, innovation, workforce, strong branding and marketing, agility and adaptability. What I found fascinating was it didn't talk about leadership. And I think really driving a distinctive competitive advantage requires leadership, because uh, there's change that is required, and we all know how difficult change can be. So the second way I think that companies should think about AI, is really, I have a bias towards the structure and operating model of business, maybe less so the structure, but an operating model that is uh, wired to connect to the customer, wired to take that and rapidly deliver, and with some discipline around thinking about, okay, what do we see this capability being able to enable? Is it going to help us drive growth? Is it going to help us with the efficiencies that account for margin? Is it opening up a new segment into the marketplace? Is a new geography? So there's a lot of different ways that I think uh, that AI could come about, but it's really back to the basics for me around, do you have an operating model as an organization that is going to enable you to use AI? It will be different, but it is certainly, that's still the basic fundamental.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you. I mean, that closely mirrors my own thoughts. But so many companies are hell bent on including AI in their business. It'll be interesting to see
Mhm.
how it plays out.
As a leader, what do you think are tools that can equip leaders in uh, changing the culture or driving competitive advantage?
Yeah, I think the most important part of driving a competitive advantage for a leader is it's humility. The key to understanding your competitive advantage is understanding your market. What are your competitors doing? What are other companies in adjacent markets doing? Is there a growing adjacency? Where should you be playing? Where could you be playing? And being willing to listen to other voices and see what other companies are doing. I think learning from the best practices of others, and I think incorporating that into your own business is a very strong way to develop a competitive advantage. Most innovations come from standing on top of the shoulders of other people. They don't come from nowhere. And so learning, looking, listening, learning, I think is the most important tool that a leader has in their playbook for figuring out where to go with a competitive advantage.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And you and I met connecting and or networking, as some call it. I call it connecting. And it's the ability to share and learn from others. I mean, it's specifically here in the Twin Cities, it's a really rich and generous community, and ones that are willing to share. And so I recently met a guy that was the CTO for Microsoft's health solution business, and he gave me all of the inside scoop on how they think about artificial intelligence. And so the community and the humility and eagerness to learn, I agree with that.
Yeah. I think one of the strongest parts of our community is that it's so diverse. You've got your strong medtech section, but you've also got a strong um, finance section and a strong insurance section and a strong, so many different sections all playing together that we can learn and, listen to each other and, figure out what, what we can take from there, what we can take from here to grow our own businesses.
Yeah, and I think one of the refrains that has been consistent as we've chatted is really about leadership, and I think leadership that crosses industry boundary, right? I think good leadership, you know when you see it.
I agree.